Welcome to a new video, part of this series where we're building an e-commerce website with Django. If you'd like to follow along, you can just go to the Django e-commerce GitHub repository. The link is in the description. Once you clone or download this, we can get started. Hey everyone, before we jump into this, if you're interested in becoming a better Django developer, then check out justdjango.com, enroll and you'll get access to exclusive video courses every month on Python, JavaScript, and React with a specific focus on, obviously, Django. The link is in the description below. Alright, so this is what we have so far. We have these items, we can view them, we can add them to the cart, we can go to the cart and see them here, and we can proceed to checkout, where we're now dealing with this checkout form. And so this is what we're going to be handling in this video, and basically just handle the process of getting the user's billing address and physical address to ship to, and at the end of this then being able to redirect them to the payment method that they select. Now there's also some stuff on here that we're not going to use, such as the first name, last name, username, and email, because we already have that, but we will keep most of this. And so let's go into that checkout form HTML file. So that's templates and then checkout.html. And here is everything. And I'm going to get started by removing everything we don't need. So that's this last name and first name. We can get rid of the entire row there. We don't need the username. We don't need the email. So if we save this and refresh this, and there's quite a big gap here, so let's just remove this class there and see what this does. Yeah, that's much better. And one thing to note is that we're not going to display this name on the card, credit card information here, because there are options to select your payment method, and we're going to handle that in a separate view, not in this same view. So we can go down there and get rid of all of that. So that's this entire row here with the name on the card and credit card and the expiration date as well. So this entire row. And if we save this, cool. And we'll also come here to the credit and debit card. I'm going to get rid of one of them here, and let's just say this is Stripe for now. So now we need to think about the type of form that we're going to create. Are we going to use a Django form, or are we just going to use plain HTML and accept the data in the post request? Now I'm more pro the method of creating the Django form. So we're going to do that. We're going to go into core and create forms.py and say from Django import forms, and we'll say this is the checkout form, and say it comes from forms.form. And if we look here at the form, we have the address, which is kind of like the street, and then we have the either apartment or suite, the country, the state, and the zip code. Now there's a package that we can use to handle selecting countries, and that we'll get into in a bit, but the state we're not going to use, so I'm going to remove that option and only use the zip code. If there are packages that handle the state, then you can obviously go and add another field to take that input in, but we're just going to remove it for simplicity. So we can get rid of that column there. And so back here in the form, we're going to start adding those fields. The first one was the street, and we'll just say street address. We'll say this is a character field. Then we had the, let's just call it the apartment address, and say this is also a character field, but I'm going to say required equals false, and that's just because here it says it's optional, so we'll go along with that. Then we have the country, and we can make use of Django countries, which is a package we're going to install. So here you can go to the GitHub repository and you can see all about it. So if we click on installation, all you have to do is just run pip install Django countries. And I'm going to run pip freeze into the requirements. There we go. Then I'll run the server. So we need to go and add Django countries to our installed apps as well. So here in settings base, I'll come up here and just add this in. And then we have an example country field. So all we do is just import the country field from Django countries and then specify that field on the model. So that's what we're going to do. We'll come here into the forms and there's a country field and I'm going to specify it in the exact same way. And here they actually have blank label as a parameter, which can just be select country by default. So we can do that. Cool. So that's the country. We'll see that in action in a bit. Then we have the zip code. So I'm going to say zip equals forms.character field as well. And then we have this option, shipping address is the same as my billing address. And we'll think about how to handle this. But for the time being, let's just keep going. Then we have the save this information for next time. So these are both checkboxes and I'm going to add them in, but we're not going to deal with functionality for them just yet. So we have same billing address. And we'll say this is equal to forms.boolean field. And I'm going to say that the widget equals to a checkbox input. Then we have save info, which is also going to be a checkbox input. And then we have the payment options. So here we'll have payment option, which will be also a Boolean field. I'm going to say widget equals forms.radio select. So that way we can only select one at a time. And so let's start taking this into a view. So we'll come here and this is going to be inside the checkout view here. And I'm going to change this into a class-based view as well. So we'll call this the checkout view. And I'm going to make this inherit from the default view. Then we can say define the get request. And there we're just going to render that self.request. And then we're going to need to get our form and pass that into the context. Then we have the post method, which also just takes in args, keyword args, and they will deal with the post request of that form. So let's go and say import from .forms, the checkout form. And then here we'll say form equals checkout form. And I'll say context form is that form. And then I'll just pass the context in here. Then the same kind of logic here, form equals that, and we'll say request.post or none. And this should be self.request. Then we'll say if form.is valid, I'm just going to say print the form is valid. And we can just say return a redirect to, let's see what URLs we have here. So we can go back to checkout. So that'll just be core checkout like that. And now let's take that checkout view and replace it there. And then say .as view. Right. So now let's come back and refresh this. And now we're going to need to go into here. And I'm going to come just to the top here and create another form. Pass in the CSRF token, and then I'll output the form. And we also have Django's crispy forms installed, so we can come to the top here and say load crispy forms tags. And then here on the form we'll say crispy, and I'm just going to add a button as well. And I'll just say class is button primary, and say type is submit. Now let's refresh this, And oh, there's a spelling mistake there, CSRF. Okay. And then let's just come here and say checkout. All right, so there's our form. And we'll worry about the styling in a second. We'll get it to look like this. But we have the street address, apartment address, the zip code, same billing address, save info, and then we aren't getting the payment options coming through. And that's very simple to fix. We can just come here and specify our payment choices. And this is going to be a tuple of tuples. I'll say the first one is just S, which is for Stripe. And then the second one we'll say is P, which is PayPal. And then we just specify these choices here in the radio select. And this is not meant to be in there. This is meant to be as a second argument. And let's change this to a choice field. All right, let's try that again. There we go. Now they're coming through. And you can only select one at a time, which is correct. And now we can worry about styling this to look the same. So what we need to do is take a look at the HTML. So let's go back here. And inside this form, we need to look at all of the fields. So you can see that, for example, this first one, the ID of address, has a class of form control, but it's inside these divs. So what we could do is, instead of outputting the form just like this, we could loop through all the fields in the form, or just access the fields directly. So for example, I'm just going to comment that out, and here I'll say form.street address, because that's this field. So if I come back and refresh this, now it's still there. It loses the placeholder, but we can come and specify the attributes inside here. So I'll say widget equals forms.text input, and I'll say attributes where the placeholder is, let's get that exact same placeholder here. And then we can come back and refresh this. And there we go. There's our placeholder. And so we can go and do the exact same thing for the rest of these. So I'll just comment this one out. And here I'll say form dot, and this is the apartment address. And then here we'll grab this exact same widget, pass it in there, and the placeholder we'll say is apartment or suite. Let's take a look. Okay, there we go. Apartment or suite. Then we have the country, and we can go and see how they output the country. And actually, let's go back here to the form, and we'll say dot form field. Then let's come back and refresh this. There we go. Now we have that country field showing up, and you have all these countries, which is pretty cool. So we can come here back inside the HTML, and here when we choose, we basically can just comment out the entire select field and then just output form dot, and this is country. And we can see here it has a class and an ID, so we can go back. And in here, I'm just going to specify attributes, and let's see here if class, and we'll get that class here, that's custom select. So like this. And then if we come back here, and cool, so that styling works. Then the zip code is simply just the zip code. So we can just come here and say form.zip and refresh this. And cool, same thing. And then we can come back, and now we have this shipping address. So I'll just comment that one out, and we'll say form dot, And this is same billing as shipping. Then we have the save info. So this will be form.saveinfo. And then we have the two inputs. So I'm just going to comment that out. And we'll put form.payment option. And this could not work because it's inside one div. Let's refresh this. And yeah. So instead we can just come above here and say for value, comma text in form.payment option dot choices, and then after that div end for. So we're basically creating a div for every input, and then we can actually comment out our own output there and bring back the input that was here already. And then the text we'll say is this name. We can actually change it to name. And then the value will come here inside the label and output it there. Then the ID I'm going to change to name and specify the for value as name as well. So let's go back and see here. And oh, we've got an end comment. Let's get rid of that. And if we come down, and okay, it's not outputting, and this is because it should be form.fields.payment options. And if we just inspect this, then we can open up the label. We have S as the label, but for the input, the ID is Stripe and the name is Stripe. So that means that value is this first value in the tuple, and then name is the second value. So we actually don't need to use value that much. So I'm going to change it to name just so we can display it. So if we refresh this, now we have Stripe and PayPal there, and we can comment out that second div. So let's come back. Cool. And we just need to make sure that they're both not checked. And now you can notice that we can actually select them both. And that's because the name, if we see here, the name was payment method. And if you want to only be able to select one of the radio options, you need them both to have the same name. So payment method is the right way to go. So we can refresh this. And now we only are able to select one at a time, which is correct. But our shipping address isn't working, and that's because the for value is being applied to something that doesn't have that ID. And actually, to make this a lot easier, what we can do is we can bring back our inputs, and we can just refresh the page. We can inspect these two, and then we get name equals save info for the one. So we can come here and specify that there. And then the other one is name equal same billing address. So we just put that there. And then what we can do is we can say if form.same billing address, then we'll say checked, and then say end if. And then we can take that, bring it here in the input, if form.saveinfo, then checked. And we can get rid of that and actually remove some of the spacing there. Okay, we'll refresh this, come down, and there we go. And then we can also go here to the form, and we can say required equals false for both of these because they're not required. Then we can come back and refresh this. And we can see they're both checked by default. Let's just add on the end of these dot value. Refresh this. There we go. Now by default they're unselected. And now everything seems to be working. So we can go and remove the form that we created up top. So that form there. And okay, so the styling is all gone there. Okay, so we can just go here to Django countries and we can make use of the country select widget. So we can just import this. And then here when we call .form field, we can pass in the widget as this country select widget. So in there we'll say widget like that. And then inside there we can specify those attributes. So this will be class, and that class is that there. And then if we go back and refresh this, there we go. Now we're getting that styling coming through. And then we can just style that zip code, which just has form control. So we can go back here. We'll say widget equals forms.text input and specify the attributes, and then just say class form control. Come back, and there we go. All right, so now all the styling looks fine. Now we can handle what happens when we actually submit the form. So back here in the view, we have the post request, and we're just going to print that form.cleaned data and see what comes through. So we'll just refresh this, enter some stuff in here, select a country. I'll select both of those and let's say Stripe, continue. And okay, we need to make sure that form is a post request form. And we must add a CSRF token. So now let's try again and select Stripe. And we didn't return a response. So here in the view, obviously our form is not coming through correctly. So what I'm going to do is say print self.request.post, and then here we'll say return. We'll do the exact same return there, and we'll just say messages.info, or we could say warning, and pass in self.request and say failed checkout. Then we can come back, and if we enter some data, okay, failed checkout. So we've got the CSRF middleware token, we have that street address, apartment address, country, zip, same billing address, save info, and payment method. And this could be the payment option because payment method is specified as the name. So let's just come back here, and I'm going to uncomment the form, and let's just output it again here and make sure that we have the correct names for each input. So we've got street address for that first one. And if we come down and inspect that one, we have street address. If we look at the payment option here for the radio options, we have name equals payment option. All right, so let's come down here all the way to these radio options, and then the name needs to be payment option. And then we're going to test what the request looks like when we submit it in this form. So let's just refresh this, and we'll just enter some data there and check out. Now let's go back, and if we take a look here, so the query dictionary is what we get here in the self.request.post, and there we can see all the fields coming through, and we get payment option is S. Now let's go back and fill out this form. Come back, and now you can see payment option is on. So that's where the mistake is. We need to make sure that the value that this payment option contains is either S or P, not on. So that means back here we can also comment that out. And if we just go down here to the payment option choices, we can just add a value into the input. And this is going to be that value variable that's being looped through. That we saw earlier was either S or P. So now if we go back and refresh this, and let's submit some data here. Now it seems like it worked, and we see the form is valid. Cool, so that is working now. We can come and get rid of all these print statements. And what we want to do is grab all of those values that we saw here in the print statement, and we're going to get them using the form.cleaned data. And then we're going to create a billing address. So we'll just come here to the models, and we're going to create this model here. So we'll say class billing address comes from models.model. We're going to assign a user, and this is just going to be a foreign key, just like this user field is. And then we're basically just going to add all the values that this form has. So that's street address, and that's a character field. We'll say maximum length is, let's say 100. Then we have the apartment address, country, zip, and copy all of those, paste them there. And these two are both character fields, but the country is not. So if we go back here to Django countries, we're going to need to add it as a field. So you can see here countries is a country field, and it says multiple equals true, which we're going to say is false. So we can just come here like that and make sure that we import this correctly as well. And that should be the same import as we saw here. So we'll just go to the top, import it there, and the server's still running. Cool. So now we have this billing address model, and I'm just going to say define string of self, and I'll just say return self.user.username, and we are going to need to make migrations, so we'll run that and then run migrate. Then we can run the server again. And so now when we submit this form, we're going to want to create the billing address for this user. And then on the order, we're going to need to create a field that references the billing address, so that when we complete the order, we can then attach the billing address to know where to send it, and also the shipping address. And then we'll just add billing address here and say this is a foreign key to the billing address, and we'll say on delete equals to, let's say, models.set null, and I'll say blank and null equal true as well. And then we can go back here, make migrations, migrate, and run the server. And now here in the view, we'll get all of that data. So that's all of these fields here on the form. So I'm just going to copy them all, and we'll just paste them all here. Equals to form.cleaned.data.get, and then that value. So now we have all of those values. We're then going to import our model, which is the billing address. So let's come here and import that from .models, and then we're going to say the billing address equals billing address, and here we're just going to pass in all of these values for the model. So that's user, so user equals to self.request.user. Then we have street address and all of these. Street address equals street address. Apartment address equals apartment address. And we've got countries. This isn't, we were meant to set that to false, and we'll say this is country. All right, make migrations to fix that. I'm just going to say 1 and we'll say China and then migrate and then just run server. All right, now we fixed that. So then here we can say that the country equals to the country, and we can say zip equals zip. Then we can say billing address dot save. And then we need to add the billing address to the order. Here in the post request, we should actually check if the order exists already. So let's just come down and I'll basically copy all of this there and then just paste that here. So we're trying to get the order based on the user, and we can basically get rid of that context there. And if the object doesn't exist, then we don't have an order, so we just redirect them back. And I'll say go back to the order summary and everything, and paste that inside the try statement. Just paste that there. So if the order exists, then we'll check if the form submission was valid. And then we will take this order here after we've saved the billing address, and we'll say order.billingaddress equals billing address and then order.save. And so now if this is a successful post request, then we also need to check which payment option was selected and redirect the user to that view that will handle that specific payment option. The save info that we've also gotten and the same billing address, these are two slightly more advanced fields that we're not going to do anything with just yet. I'm going to comment them out, and above here we'll just say to do add functionality for these fields. And the implementation of this save info is a little bit confusing because in order for us to deliver something to that address, we'll need to store the address. So it's confusing as to how we could do this without saving the information, as we kind of need it to deliver that object to them. So if you have any proposed ways on how to handle that, leave a comment down below. Otherwise, we're just going to leave it commented out for now. The same billing address, which is meant to be same shipping address. Let's just come here, change this to same shipping address. And then here, this is same shipping address. Then here in the view, this would be same shipping address where we get the value of same shipping address. So if you are getting this value, then you'd want to create a shipping address model, or we could just create an address model and store a field on there, which would have a field saying is billing or is shipping, and then you could select which ones they are, or both of them. So there's many ways we can handle this. For now, I'm also going to leave that commented out and just work with the billing address. And then here, after we save the order, what I'm going to do is say to do add a redirect to the selected payment option, which is something that we'll handle in the next video. So if you enjoyed this video, then leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.